Hey there, nerdkinders. Yes, we just coined that phrase for all our loyal listeners, so wear it proudly. Did you know that you can actually get paid just for listening to this podcast?
It's true.
Wait, is this the Podcoin app we were talking about last episode?
Yeah, it's a free app that actually pays you to listen to podcasts.
I've actually been using it for a while now. So when can I expect my big paycheck to roll in?
Slow down there, Colonel Steve Austin. You listen to podcasts and earn Podcoin points while you listen. Then you turn those points in for gift cards at places like Amazon or Starbucks.
Hi, Starbucks blonde vanilla bean cocoa milk latte.
Or listen to that voice inside that tugs at your heartstrings. It's called a conscience. Heed its call and earn points towards charity. There are multiple causes available to donate your points to. But since it's no secret that we here at TMI rely heavily on our local library systems to feed our classic movie feature, we thought it would be noble to get you, our listeners, to donate to the Books for Poor Kids charity.
All right, I like it. A podcast with a cause.
So rebellious.
Here's all you need to do. Step 1. Download the Podcoin app right now on your phone.
I'm assuming it's available for iPhone and Android?
Yes. Step 2. Use our code TMI NERDKIND. That's TMI NERDKIND to get 300 Podcoin just for signing up. Step 3. Subscribe and listen to TMI every Wednesday or any of your favorite podcasts. We don't mind, as long as you earn points. Don't forget to use our unique code TMI NERDKIND. The more you listen, the more you earn.
Funny, I never thought of Jeff as a latte kind of guy.
The moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerf Herder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Mike Mjolnir Evans. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
I don't know if I'm more distraught now or before I went to the movie.
Let's work it out together.
There's a lot to work out.
Yeah, I know.
This is like a therapy session. Are you going to charge me?
Perhaps. Yeah.
Oh, bills in the mail.
The bill's in the mail. All right, gentlemen, we're on. We're recording.
All right.
This episode is the culmination of a year's work for TMI. We have finally made it.
As many of you have as well. Listen, we're not alone. This is a group effort.
Now, let us start right away by saying that if you have not seen Endgame, stop listening right now. Because our friend, the spoiler... Yeah, there he is. He is going to make many appearances during this episode.
He's going to get a workout this week.
No spoiler. Oh, spoiler.
Spoiled.
So Endgame, going into it, feelings. Let's talk about our movie-going experience.
Well, can we talk about the news first?
Yes. Do we have to? Do we have anything that good that we can...
Listen, I wanted to... All right, we'll do a slow build-up. All right, we'll get through the news really quick because I know we...
What do we got?
My notes are normally about 2.5 pages. I have almost 6 pages of notes on this movie.
I was going to say 6 pages of news. We got
No. All right, so let's go. We spoke about this a couple weeks ago. Jim, the North Bergen, New Jersey high school that staged the Alien production.
Yes.
A revival. They used Ridley Scott's money, updated some of the costume special effects. I guess it's pretty impressive because Sigourney Weaver herself showed up.
Yeah, I heard that it was a surprise to the cast. They kept it secret from the cast until she actually appeared.
Yeah, this is, I mean, we mentioned this before, that this is just taking on a life of its own. So somewhere right now, there is a school that's already planning Star Wars the musical.
Right.
I feel it like this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
And now we're going to mine.
Now all these kids are hoping to reel in J.J. Abrams or George.
Correct. Or George Lucas. George Lucas has got nothing better to do. So yeah, so long gone, you're not going to be doing any of the classics. You're not doing, How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying or Oklahoma. Oh, we're going right for Running Man. So yeah, kudos to them though.
Kudos to them, and kudos to whoever heads up that art department, that drama department over at that school for choosing Alien, who you'd never think that 17, 18-year-olds would even know as a...
Well, not only that, they had to have written a script. I mean, it's not like, when I was in musicals in high school, like you had ones to choose from that had all the composition and had the scripts available. So they had to have created this from scratch, is my guess. I just mentioned Star Wars, the musical. What is it? The end of this year, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland is opening.
Correct. Yep. And I will be visiting Galaxy's Edge in September myself. We're going out to California to.
Oh, you got your tickets.
Yes, we do.
Okay. Do you know that there are reports that they are going to limit you to a 4-hour window?
I did hear that, but I'm hoping that this is a downtime for Disneyland. We'll see. That maybe.
How is that 4 hours? That's one line and then 3 hours in the gift shop.
Avatar, when we went to Disney last year, Avatar Land had been open in Animal Kingdom for about 2 years at that point. And still, I could only ride one ride because the other had a 3-hour wait time.
4 hours. 4 hours. That's nothing.
It's like being at the DMV.
Right.
It is.
Yeah, bring your binoculars so you can kind of see the Falcon.
But you got to ask yourself, I really want to go on this new ride that I've never experienced, but do I want to give up my whole day waiting in line when I could be doing so much other stuff here?
You're just fighting the crowds. The crowds are good. 4 hours? Come on. I feel that the nerds are going to rise up on this one. And how are they going to enforce it?
Give you an ankle bracelet or something?
Right. Beep, 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 beep. We got to run. Yeah, so that's interesting. And since we're talking about Endgame, I'm going to just bring this up because, you were just mentioning, our feelings going into this theater. Standing outside yesterday morning, I was actually sick to my stomach because I just kept expecting someone to spoil it. Yeah. Someone to walk by and actually throw something out there, which seems to be prevalent. People are doing this on social media. I guess in Hong Kong, somebody spoiled it and was promptly beaten up.
Do we have video of that, please, Jeff?
Let that be a warning to all of you who come out of the movie theater and open your freaking pie hole.
I would love to see that narrated by Alfonso Ribeiro on America's Funniest Home Videos.
Somebody had to capture it, and I'm sorry, you have it coming. You had it coming.
Yeah, you deserve that beatdown.
So that's all of the nerd news we have. But I do want to bring up news a little more personable to us, which is on June 8th, we will be making our very first in-person appearance at Incredicon in Middletown, New York, Galleria Crystal Run.
We'll be signing your laptops, anything you listen to podcasts on. Bring it. We'll sign it.
So TMI, your favorite podcast, you'll get to meet the team. Actually, we're gonna spin some wheel of nerddom and answer some trivia questions, and you can walk away with some prizes.
Yeah, we'll contemplate your nerd life with you, tell you how to get out of your mother's basement, that type of thing. Nice.
And then anybody who doesn't listen to the show and stumbles across us, we are going to force you to actually subscribe to us.
It's Hong Kong all over.
And that's my news. Let's get into it.
All right. Okay, so let's talk about our movie-going experience.
Okay.
What were you faced with rolling up to the theater Saturday morning, going into Endgame?
No parking.
Really?
What was our show times here?
11 o'clock on Saturday.
Mine was 10 a.m.
Mine was 10 a.m. as well.
Which is the earliest my theater has shown a movie in about 10 years. My Regal, for whatever reason, seemed shocked that people showed up for this movie. They were ill-prepared. That's all I got to say.
Now, we all had tickets in hand, correct, as we walked into the theater?
Yeah, I actually paid that convenience fee, and I ordered my tickets online.
And it was quite convenient to bypass that line that were waiting to buy tickets.
Well, there was probably about 25 people. My showing was at 10. I got there at 9. And there was already about 25 people waiting.
Yeah, at the ticket taker, there were two lines at my Regal. There was the line actually buy tickets, and then the line at the ticket taker, because when I got there, they hadn't actually started letting people into the theater yet. And it was only our one normal ticket taker who was a little bit overwhelmed, to say the least, by the line. There was probably about 50 people waiting there by the ticket taker.
That's a lot of pressure ripping that tag in half.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you see, all these people have their tickets on their phone now, and
now you got
half of them don't have the proper ticket or whatever, so he can't let them in. So it jacks up the line when that happens.
Yeah,
everybody's
my phone's at 2%, and you're like, oh, please let the line move. Yeah,
you never see the looks of hatred that you do from the people in line at these people that can't get their tickets.
or their kid is at the concession stand. Hold on, Joey, get over here quick.
Jeff, you were so worried about the spoilers. I actually was listening to music on my phone, so I could just tune out anything that was happening around me.
That's smart, because there was I had people who had already seen this twice in front of me. It doesn't take much for somebody just to open their mouth, and the fact that I was in line, I could see the entranceway to the theater, and I'm like, I made it. This is it. But I had to tune out because I was sick to my stomach. I really was. I've never had a feeling like this in a very long time.
Yeah, it was like I was like a kid on Christmas Eve, It was like all this anticipation and anxiety.
Anxiety, right. I mean, we knew going in that there was going to be some deaths. But it was just a matter. It was the unknown. And I'm just like, yeah, it really got to me. It was crazy.
See, I didn't even accept that, because I came in so cold. And I was just like, I'm a half hour away from this. There is no way this is getting spoiled.
You see, I was anxious because I felt like I needed to pay ultra close attention to everything. So all my senses were on hyper alert.
How many times did we cry?
Well, I welled up at least 4 times. I don't know if I actually cried.
Twice, at least twice. I think they ran into each other. So
how do we define cry? The hitch in the throat, sobs? Tears running down the face?
I had 3 times. Twice, I had tears coming down my eyes. One was just pure joy. But yeah, bring your tissues, because this is it's an emotional roller coaster.
It is extremely emotional.
So shall we get into it? Shall we actually break down this?
Let's get into it, yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
All right. Now
they pick this thing up right where we left off with Infinity War.
Whew.
I think, what do they explain? It's 3 weeks later from the events of Infinity War?
21 days or something like that. Yeah.
And the world is trying to
come to grips.
To come to grips with what's happened. The Avengers are trying to come to grips with what's happened because they feel that they've failed the universe.
They did.
They did.
They didn't feel, they did.
And the argument is you should have just cut his arm off when you had the chance.
Right.
Infinity War.
Yeah.
And they do that here. They actually do that here.
So that, this basically breaks down into 3 acts. And the first act is very depressing. It's very sobering.
Yeah, this does take a while to get moving because you're dealing with the aftermath in the first act of the
It's a slow build train.
The morning.
Yeah. Yeah. But there's that moment where they actually get their act together. They chase down Thanos and kill him in like the first 40, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Not even.
Then you're like, okay, how is this going to proceed, this movie now? You're like, okay, we killed him. We're done. That's all.
It was great, though, because you're like, oh, I have no idea what's happening now.
No. And then would you get the little snippet? 5. And then you just see the number 5 on screen for like the longest time. 5 weeks, 5 days, 5 hours, 5 years later. And you're like, what?
But wait, let's move it back a little bit.
Okay, sorry, we're getting ahead.
The movie opens with Tony Stark floating in space with Nebula.
Yes, which we've seen in the trailers. That is the one thing that they've really kind of...
Yeah, the first scene they have given away in the trailer. So if you're thinking that you saw the trailer and you know too much, don't worry, because you've just seen literally the first 5 minutes of the movie.
Right.
And so we know that Nebula and Tony Stark are the only survivors from Titan because everybody else has wasted away due to the snap from Infinity War.
They dusted.
And they are in, is it the Guardian ship or Thanos' ship?
No, it's the Guardians. Yeah. And what I didn't pick up on is that the second ship, because the first one was destroyed in the second, in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, which was the Milano, named after Alyssa Milano. This one is called the Benatar, which I did not pick up.
Oh.
Yes.
Nice. So they're drifting in space, and the the spaceship is dead. They can't get it to go. They have no food. Their oxygen is running out. So Tony Stark is on death's door during the first 5 minutes of the movie. And I was convinced that he was going to buy it right there.
Yeah, they go down that road a couple times, actually. They kind of tease you with it.
Yeah. At the last possible second, Captain Marvel comes in and saves the day, and she brings the ship back to Earth. But what was interesting is they totally bypassed that post-credit sequence at the end of Captain Marvel. You don't see that scene in
Endgame, which is interesting.
Yeah, they don't introduce her to them in the same way in the actual finished product. So then they decide to take matters into their own hands and go after Thanos to try to reverse what's happened.
Yeah.
So, wait, Jim, don't you have to back up to Hawkeye?
Yeah, the movie opens with Hawkeye and his family.
Opens with Hawkeye, yes.
Right. Where you see him with his family, and the snap takes him all.
Because I really like that, because that did begin right where it ended.
Yeah.
Right, that was the continuity for me.
Because, it did end with the snap, and the movie begins with the snap. The same, so you're, on the same timeline as you were ending Infinity War. So, yeah.
But I put you off track. I'm sorry.
No, I wasn't going anywhere until we get to Thanos. They track him down on whatever planet he's on, and he's doing his gardening, right?
You're right. He's like the gardener now. Titan. The sad Titan.
So they track him down, and out of anger, first they get the gauntlet off of his hand, which is a ruin.
Which takes like 2 seconds.
Yep.
It's like...
He confesses that he's already destroyed the stones, so he can prevent them.
Oh, that's how they tracked him. That's how they tracked him. Nebula, and the signature from the stones indicated that he had used them like 2 days ago. So they raced there to that planet, only to realize that he used the stones to destroy the stones.
And the big money shot here is after Thanos explains this, Thor immediately beheads him, which is a shocker of a moment as well.
Right. And they're like, what'd you do? And he goes, I went for the head.
I was like, awesome.
little too late.
So that's when we get the 5 years
5 years later. And the world has gone to shit. There's
no Mets.
No. And I was wondering, because you see as you're going over Citi Field and you see you're going over an aerial shot of the Statue of Liberty, all these boats have moored up all around the Statue of Liberty. And if you look at Citi Field in the parking lot, there's all these little campsites in the parking lot as well. Like, what's going on here? People are just grouping together, and
you think there'd be a ton of housing available.
Right.
Yeah.
Now half the world is gone. It's like, oh, my neighbors are gone. I'm going to take their house. And I guess all the garbage men were gone in the snap as well, because there was some crap piled up in the streets. It's just people didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to process it. And you see Captain America is now like running a therapy session, trying to get people to come to grips, to move on. He's telling them to move on, but meanwhile, the Avengers are doing anything but. They're still licking their wounds.
And I really wanted to talk about this aspect of the beaten Avengers. Probably the highlight of the movie for me is Thor.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to back that 5,000%, because the one complaint that I am seeing is that everyone is completely upset about the treatment of Thor in this movie. And I thought it was brilliant.
I thought it was as well.
Brilliant. I mean... Take any one of these characters in the last 22 movies, this character has had the most growth and change, I think, from when we first were introduced to him. Because
if you think about it, if Thor had gone for the head, because he, in effect, killed Thanos at the end of Infinity War, if he had just gone 6 inches higher, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
So Thor really blames himself for everything that has happened, and it shows when you see him in New Asgard.
It got the first laugh of the movie.
It did, because you always have the gratuitous Chris Hemsworth without his shirt on scene in every movie that he's in, and you think, okay, here it comes again. He's just walking around drinking a beer with no shirt on, and then the big reveal is he's got this huge belly, and he's moved in with Korg from. And the big answer to the big question, what happened to Korg and Valkyrie at the end of Ragnarok? And you see that they are alive and well in New Asgard.
New Asgard, which I thought was brilliant. Yeah. And at one point, I think Tony Stark even refers to him as Lebowski, which is great.
Yes.
he just got the
he
long...
looks exactly like him. He's wearing the sweater. At one point, he's wearing the sweater.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm blathering about. I've got information, man. New shit has come to light. And shit, man...
And he just got a beer in his hand the whole time, and he's just distraught. He's just completely disheveled. He's given up. And I thought it was brilliant. It was brilliantly played.
And you could tell that Hemsworth was just having a great time doing this.
Agreed.
Like with this and Ragnarok, I think have just rekindled his Thor character for him and for audiences, because I cannot wait to see him again now.
Yeah.
Right. And we'll get to where they leave him at the end of this movie. Really teases me that we could be seeing something really fun with this character. So this is really kind of like the end of Act 1, because Act 2 is now the rebuild. Oh, Ant-Man comes back.
Ant-Man. This is the whole catalyst for Act 2.
This is the momentum, the rebuild.
So now here's just there's a lot of leaps of faith that you have to take in this movie. There's a lot of things you have to swallow and believe just to go along with the ride. And the whole Ant-Man returning is one of them. First of all, when Ant-Man disappears into the quantum realm and he gets stuck there. This
is at the end of Ant-Man and Wasp.
The van that what do you call the machine that he actually used to get into the quantum realm? Does anybody know what that machine was called?
The quantum device.
Right. It's in the van, right? So the van is on the roof of a building at the end of Ant-Man and Wasp. In Endgame, you see the same van.
Like in storage.
In storage, it's been. I think it's in the basement of the same building that it was on top of. Yeah, because you see there
are boxes that have Lang's name on it, so it was like all his possessions. I guess.
So whoever found the van up on the top of the roof brought it down into the basement, and it's been impounded.
Right.
And they didn't touch any of this stuff. They're not like, oh, this looks like a bomb or something else like that.
No, they just
stuck it all into this little storage facility.
And the only way it gets reactivated is a mouse, basically.
It's a mouse walks across the control panel, and that's how Ant-Man comes out of the quantum realm.
We can thank the mouse for everything.
We can.
Mouse saved the day.
The mouse saved the day.
Yeah. Mighty Mouse.
Maybe we'll find out in 4 movies' time, just like how how Marvel loves to call back to things. As we know from the end of this movie, the mouse is maybe something more than it seems.
Maybe he was really Peter Pettigrew.
Maybe.
Oh.
Maybe.
Crossover. Let's go.
So anyway, Ant-Man gets released from the quantum.
And immediately is like, what the is going on?
Because as he says, only 5 hours have gone by for him when 5 years have gone by in reality, which is a pretty long time anyway to be in that. It's just floating around for 5 hours. So he's a little discombobulated. He doesn't realize what's happened. He's walking through. It's like the beginning of The Walking Dead where he's walking.
Basically. Yeah. It's just the kid rides by on his bike. He's like, kid, what happened here? And the kid just kind of looks at him and then drives away. And it's like, thanks, man.
And he kind of pieces things together that some big catastrophic event has happened, because at the base of the Golden Gate Bridge, there's a memorial set up for those who have vanished. So he sees this and he's looking frantically for his daughter's name to see if
instead finds his own name.
Finds his own name, yeah.
And that was cry number 1 for me when he made it back to the home, and Cassie, who was all of 8 years old when we saw her last, is now a teenager. He answers the door. That was cry number 1 for me.
As a college student, answering the door.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess.
The whole catalyst for the rest of the movie lies in Ant-Man, because he gets the idea, because he's been stuck in the quantum realm and time moves differently there, that they can use that as a source of time travel.
Which we've been told from the Russo brothers for the last 2 years that time travel does not play a part in this movie at all. But obviously they lied.
So they have to go visit Tony to get that big brain on this idea to see if it's feasible.
And
I love the scene where they're trying to sell it to Tony. Over the past 5 years, Tony has really shut himself off from the rest of the Avengers. He and Pepper have had a daughter who's maybe 4 or 5 years old at the time of this.
Which I really like the direction that they went with this character. That he basically, so if you go back into Infinity War, the opening of the movie is him and Pepper running, and he's like, I had a dream, we had a daughter, we named it after your uncle, Morgan. So he takes that to heart, and he's like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to now have the life I should have had. And they're out in the woods somewhere, and they got a nice little house, and he's playing daddy, and he wants no part of it. It doesn't work like that. Time travel doesn't work like that. But they completely went down the Back to the Future 2 road.
1.21 gigawatts! Great Scott!
I mean, that is the template for this movie.
But let's bring back Hawkeye into the proceedings, because as this is going on, after the 5 year later jump, we find that Hawkeye has pretty much turned into John Wick. That he is just massacring all these criminals, organized.
And they're tracking him and kind of letting him do it.
Yeah. They're just like, well, whatever,
So that character, by the way, that's Ronin, which I think after, was it Secret War, Civil War? Maybe after Civil War, he took on that he took on that persona for a while. No more bow and arrows. He's straight up samurai. Later on, you see him with bow and arrow and the sword, and you're like, oh, Hawkeye's badass.
I don't think they've ever used him as well as he was.
Well, I mean, you now
here.
have the emotional connection that he's lost his family, so he really has nothing left to live for, kind of a thing, except to exact revenge and somehow make himself feel better. Because the one guy he was fighting, they were like, I don't know, Japanese warlords or whatever, and the guy's like, I mean nothing to you. And it didn't matter. He was like, screw it, I'm just taking you out. I don't care. I got nothing better to do with my day.
And let's talk about the post 5-year Hulk as well. So
Professor
Bruce
Hulk.
Banner and the Hulk have merged in the 5 years. Bruce has
smart
leaned,
Hulk.
so they have really merged into one being rather than two separate
They
beings.
refer to him as Professor Hulk. And the team really seemed to be kind of taken aback by it all. And he was like, yeah, I know. I'm wearing shirts now. But he's not as much fun to watch as the straight-on Hulk.
As Angry Hulk.
Yeah,
Correct.
the Smash 'em Hulk. And I think the directors knew that. That's why later on we get a really nice scene of the old Hulk. So yeah, so the team has been reassembled.
And then Tony actually steps up, feeling guilty again about Peter Parker. And so he decides that he is going to help them. And he figures out a way to do this. And
In
get
like
back.
an hour.
Yeah, in an evening.
Yeah. He's like doing dishes and he's like, wait a minute. He's got all even though they've got like this cabin in the woods somewhere, he has this high-tech table available to him with the old school Mission Impossible screens, and he's twisting it around and he's running all these variables, and sure enough, it works out. So now he's got to go back to Avengers headquarters and basically say, I figured it out, in true Tony Stark fashion.
They had Banner working on it as well, but he wasn't quite gelling with the time travel. But as soon as Tony Stark comes back into it, they have a plan. Plan is, as Scott Lang refers to it, is a time heist.
Time heist.
They're going to go back in time. So here's the big reveal. Here's how they're going to fix everything. They're going to go back in time and collect the stones before Thanos gets them, bring them back to the present, do a snap to undo everything that Thanos did, and then get the stones back to exactly where they were in time, where they were taken from.
But
So
we've got limited Pym particles and we have limited
trips. The Pym particles
only allowed them.
it only allows them 1 or 2 trips each.
One round trip.
So that's what they do. So this is the ingenious part about this, because everybody going into Endgame, including us, are kind of reassessing, going back and looking at the old Marvel movies to kind of get themselves ready.
Oh, they're running 24/7 on cable television right now.
And Endgame does this as well in this whole
Well,
setup.
like I said, it is straight up Back to the Future too.
It is.
They go back into they go back into numerous movies, but mostly Avengers. So they go back to 2012 because I think
they have to figure out where the stones are
where the stones are, and then they split into teams. So they realize 3 stones are in New York
during the incident in New York.
right? The initial Thanos' initial invasion with the Chitauri.
There's
2
the ether from Thor Dark World.
Dark
Who ever
World,
thought
which
that they
everyone wants to forget about.
Who would ever think they would choose that movie to go back to?
No, now they're forcing us to go back and rewatch that movie.
And Thor has a great scene where they're actually working out this plan ahead of time. Thor actually steps up to try to explain the ether.
Yeah.
Oh yes, it was stolen by dark elves. And I hope he stays fat in current movie.
You know that's not going to happen. He is fun to watch, though.
He is.
And if your head is confused by time travel, you're going to lose your freaking mind trying to keep track of this, because it does get wonky.
And
because we as movie-going viewers, every one of those time travel movies that they mention is our knowledge of what time travel is. And now they're telling us, no, that's not how time travel works at all.
But then they go back on their own word later in the movie. We'll discuss this as we get to
because it does get.
Let's get back to where we were. They go back to the original Avengers movie. So we have a team of Hulk, Captain America, and Tony Stark that revisit the first Avengers movie, those events in 2012.
Yep.
We have Thor and Rocket go back to Thor the Dark World.
Yep.
To get the ether. We have the Power Stone, and that's gone after by Nebula. And who was with Nebula?
That was War Machine.
War Machine. So they go to get the Power Stone from the beginning shot of Guardians of the Galaxy, where you see Star-Lord on the planet.
Which is a nice, funny little take in and of itself.
It is. And then, of course, that leaves the Soul Stone. Natasha and Hawkeye have to go to get that. They don't know what's ahead of them there. And they run into the Red Skull, and they come up to the same proposition that Red Skull gave Thanos.
How many times do you think he made that speech over the millennia that he's been there?
He's probably like, oh, here we go.
Here we go again.
Yep.
Yeah. And that was my second cry.
The loss of Black Widow. Here comes the spoiler.
That's our first death. And they fight. And you see, they've established from the first get-go that these two have a history together. They even threw back in the little Budapest comment. And they realize that one of them is going to have to be sacrificed in order to get this stone. And they both decide that it should be them. So then it's just like this little, brother-sister fight, trying to get the last cookie on a plate. Who's gonna jump off the cliff first? And I thought that was cute, but right up until the very end, you didn't know which one of these was actually going to go. You didn't know which way it was going to go. Hawkeye felt that he wasn't really redeemable after all the crap that he had pulled as this Ronin character. So maybe, he didn't deserve to go back and get his family.
But I think that they're also playing on the fact that so many fans know what's coming on the horizon. They're so steeped in this Marvel Cinematic Universe that everybody that is even a little bit invested knows that there's a Black Widow film in development.
Yeah, that's the
so
other
you're
thing.
thinking to yourself, she could never die. They're going to make a movie about her. That's not
right.
her. And then it's her.
Yeah, it is her. And I didn't cry when she died, but I think the build-up and just the emotional connection that these two characters had, and that they were both willing to die, not only for their cause, but for each other, I thought was very noble. And I thought it was a nice full circle for that relationship.
It was. And that relationship meant more here, obviously, because the stakes were much higher.
Right.
But that was always just really one of the lesser subplots of the other Avengers movies, of what was going on between those two. But really, it stepped up to the fore here, especially with her death scene.
Well, I think every one of these characters really gets a moment to shine in this. This is such a love letter to everything that's come before. And to go back into the New York battle.
So many great little scenes in this Avengers sequence as well. There's where Cap fights himself because the old Cap thinks the new Cap is Loki.
Yeah, he thinks he's Loki. Right, because they jump right after they capture Loki. So, the scene where Loki's on the ground and he's in the Stark Towers, I'm sorry, and the whole team has got him surrounded. And he's like, I'll have that drink now. That's literally where the 2023 Tony Stark comes into the scene and sneaks around. But then you see all this other behind-the-scenes stuff where you start getting Pierce, Robert Redford's character, who didn't show up until Winter Soldier, makes an appearance. It just fills in everything that's going on in the background of New York and just makes that movie so much better.
Ant-Man sabotages the core in Tony Stark's chest, the old
2012 Tony Stark,
to cause him to collapse. So everybody puts their attention on Tony Stark on the floor. They all ignore the Tesseract,
right?
Which Loki grabs and disappears.
So in the Captain Marvel review, and I said, this MacGuffin
is not gone, Jeff.
Can I just no? And I apologize for the bitching because now I'm completely confused. What it is.
And the fact that they wouldn't let Hulk get in the elevator causes Tony Stark to lose the Tesseract in the first place.
That's a great scene, and that's what I was saying before, which is the Professor Hulk, while he's kind of cool and different approach to the character, is not fun to watch because he's not doing anything. Yeah. He's more brain than brawn. So to see the old school Hulk, the smashing Hulk, and after that scene, they're all getting in the elevator, and he goes to get in there like, whoa, weight limit, buddy, take the stairs. Hulk hates stairs, stairs. And there's just that scene where he's going down the spiral, so many stairs. So when he gets to the bottom, he blows the door open and knocks unconscious 2023 Tony. And there's a lot, the cap on cap fight.
And the first actual applause, because my theater was silent, and there were little kids in here just like yours, Jeff, but it was there was no mommy, I have to go to the bathroom. The theater was silent. It was perfect. And they broke out into applause a number of times. The first one was when Cap gets in the elevator with Frank Grillo and all these Hydra guys that you think are
a massive callback to Winter Soldier.
And he says, you think there's going to be another elevator fight from Winter Soldier,
right? And his thing is, all right, gentlemen, before we begin,
All he does is say, "Hail Hydra," and they let him.
Brilliant,
let him have
brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Because now he knows that they're, Sitwell is Hydra.
Yep.
And just diffuses the moment in like a heartbeat.
And just takes it out, and they let him walk away because they think that he's one of them.
You're right. He immediately runs into 2012 Captain America, and they just have a fisticuff. They just, it's tit for tat. That they're the same character. Now, theoretically, I guess in the time travel universe, you're really not supposed to run into yourself. Whatever. Suspend disbelief. It's a
great scene, so we'll let that slide, right?
And he does defeat, knocks out the 2012 Captain America. And there was a joke earlier on where they were making fun of his costume from that movie. Tony Stark was making fun of him. And Ant-Man says, your ass looks great. I always thought you were like America's ass. And as 2023 Captain America's walking away from his beat-up version on the floor, he goes, that is America's ass. And he even says, he says, oh, when he first runs into himself. Yeah. And so go back, 3 movies ago, where he's calling out language. And now he's the colloquialism.
So they don't get the Tesseract. So Hulk goes to the sanctum of Doctor Strange. Before Doctor Strange even exists, he's still a surgeon.
Yeah, because he goes there, and the ancient one is there, and she's like, you're about five years too early.
But when Hulk divulges that Doctor Strange willingly gave up the time stone, then she changes heart and she hands it over because she knows that he had to have a reason to give up that stone.
But not before explaining the time travel conundrum, which is if you remove one of these stones from our existing prime timeline or whatever you want to call it, you're now creating an alternative divergent timeline. And this is where it gets really confusing as we get toward the end of the movie.
So the way that I read that is that when the present-day Avengers go back to 2012 New York, and they screw up with the Tesseract, and Loki gets it and goes, they have created a different timeline.
Absolutely. Yep.
From messing around with stuff there.
That is alternative timeline number 1.
Yes.
There are multiple.
So what they end up having to do, the movie really ignores the fact that Loki is gone. They'd never pick up on that again after it happens.
Nope.
So whether they're saving that for the TV show, whether that's going to be the basis or if it's going to go back in time, who knows? But the Loki problem, hopefully we'll revisit that at some later movie or TV show.
Well, isn't he getting his own TV show?
He is.
Yeah.
He is. But that means that our heroes don't have the Tesseract. So they have to go further back in time to a SHIELD outpost. What was it, late 60s, early 70s that they traveled to?
That was 1970.
1970.
Yeah, which is where, if you go back into Captain America, that was his army base where he was. The sign actually says birthplace of Captain America, and Tony's like, you weren't born here, right? But they inevitably run into Howard Stark, and they run into Hank Pym, and you get a shot of the original Ant-Man helmet, which was great. And I will say they've done a phenomenal job of this whole de-aging characters, which we've seen a little bit of going back to, was Iron Man 2 or 3, where he looks like Robert Downey Jr. from like the 80s.
Right. And then you had Kurt Russell in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes, yeah. They've done a much better job of really kind of taking these characters and applying that so that you get a better sense of the timeline and, the fact that they're in a younger. And we also get our Stan Lee cameo in that.
We do, and we also get, let me point out the cameo from Yvette Nicole Brown, who is a mainstay of The Talking Dead and was on Community, as well as Ken Jeong, the comedian, who does a throwaway cameo.
Such a throwaway cameo. By the time you were even like, wait a minute, is that? It's gone.
He's gone, yeah.
Yeah. I guess these directors worked on Community, or they're associated, because a lot of these actors cross over and do these little cameos.
Yeah, they do, and they're big genre fans as well, from what I understand. These actors.
Listen, if you're going to ask me to be a cameo in an Avengers movie, I'm all in.
So this was, Jeff, may I hazard a guess that this scene was the second of your crying jags here in the movie?
No.
Because this kind of got to me, the whole scene between Stark and his father. I thought that was a little emotional. And I got some choked up moments.
And that was nice. That was nice because he's always had that daddy issue. Yeah. I had a problem just with the actor wise, because I think in Peggy Carter, they had a different actor playing Howard Stark.
They did. It's a
than the
much
one who
younger
plays him.
version. Yeah.
But he doesn't look anything like that actor.
No,
That
it's
actor's very
Dominic
tall
Cooper.
and thin. And when I first saw him, I'm like, wait a minute, because you really only see Howard Stark in the Avengers movies in like video in flashbacks. You don't, you know. So my version of Howard Stark was the one from the Peggy Carter. So that kind of took me out a little bit. And I'm like, wait a minute, is that the same guy? It's not the same guy.
But I love the fact that they used Jarvis, the same actor, in this as they did in the Agent Carter TV show.
Yep.
So I appreciated that. I think that was the first time an actor from the Marvel TV shows has made it into the movies, because you can't count Coulson because it was the other way around.
No.
So there we have it. So all of our heroes have their stones. Oh, we didn't talk about Thor going back to Asgard and talking to his mother, which was also an emotional
And
scene.
I completely missed the fact that that's Renee Russo.
Yeah, you didn't know that?
I did not. I saw her credit and I'm like, Renee Russo? Who the hell was she playing? No, I missed it completely.
Yeah.
And I obviously missed it completely in Thor Dark World.
Now, one of the biggest shocks for me was the fact that Natalie Portman was in this movie, who I thought had sworn off the Marvel movies, but then I read that it was unused footage.
Yeah, but she also showed up at the premiere, so someone's looking to make them in.
Voice work for the movie, though.
She did.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. So Rocket has to actually extract the ether.
You never see the scene. He just runs away. He's like, I got it.
Because if you remember, during Thor Dark World, she was kind of possessed by the ether at some point. And so Rocket gets it out of her somehow.
Yeah, while Thor is, looking to rummage through his father's wine cellars and stumbles across his mom. And it has I think she had more dialogue in this movie than she did in the other.
Yeah, she did.
Thor movies altogether. Well, she died in the second one. Sorry, spoiler alert.
And we get the return of Mjolnir in this scene. Thor gets his old hammer.
That leads into the greatest scene in this movie.
Oh, let's not spoil that just yet. But I love the part Thor just reaches his hand out and his mother's like, it takes a minute.
It takes a minute, right? Because he's like, what are you doing? Yeah, so now he has Stormbreaker and he has Mjolnir.
Yeah, because when Cap goes back, we'll get there at the end. So because that Thor has to return that hammer or it's taken away from the Thor from that timeline. So then we get our final stone, the Power Stone, procured from Star-Lord by Nebula and by War Machine. And unfortunately, Nebula being cyborg, there's a connection between the present-day Nebula and the 2014 Nebula.
Which was an interesting twist, because I'm like, all right, where are we going with this?
Did not see that coming.
No, not at all. And Thanos quickly realizes what's going on and who these people are and what they're trying to do.
And so this is the badass warlord Thanos that we're talking about now, the 2014 version, and not the Lorax version that we see in the present day.
I speak for the trees, and I'll yell and I'll shout for the fine things on earth that are on their way out.
Yeah, he's still got an agenda.
Angry, and he wants those stones.
Yeah.
So he uses Nebula to follow them back to the present day. So that really begins our Act 3 of the movie.
She infiltrates, and they just assume that she's the Nebula that they've known. So that was very interesting.
Yes, and I love the fact that all the Avengers all had on the Ant-Man outfit at the same time. That was just mind-blowing.
Oh, yeah, that they're all wearing the... I like the fact that Thor still had his belly, even.
Yep, in the costume, yeah.
In the costume.
So now let's talk about this. So they have all the stones. They don't know that Thanos is about to blow up the Avengers compound, which is local to us, by the way, in upstate New York. We often see it as we're driving to work.
A lot of security up there.
Yeah, a lot of security. So let's talk about this. They're planning on reversing everything with how do they know that it will reverse if they
there's a huge leap of faith. And I guess Thanos could have done anything. He could have just wished it. He didn't have to snap his fingers, and yet here
it was a symbolic snapping of the fingers.
It's integral that you snap your fingers in order to make this stuff happen.
So it's like when you wish upon a star. Whatever, you could wish for $1 million and snap your fingers, and that's what you would have.
So they all make their way back to the compound. They realize that Natalie is gone, that she sacrificed herself in order for Hawkeye to get the Soul Stone.
The Soul Stone.
Yep.
And then almost immediately after, the Hulk actually puts it on, and he snaps.
So what Iron Man does is build his own gauntlet, and I will tell you that was the one spoiler I saw on Facebook, which was somebody had taken a picture of a toy of the Iron Man fist with the stones in place.
Oh.
But I completely forgot about it until it showed up in the movie. And I'm like, oh, yeah. So I was happy with that. Yeah.
So Hulk does the snap because they think that Hulk is the only one that could withstand it, the power surge that's going to come from the
it
stones.
almost took him out.
And immediately afterwards, Hawkeye gets a call from his wife. So they know that it happened.
It worked, yep.
And immediately after that,
boom,
Thanos shows up. And then we get, from that point on, we get an extended battle scene to end all battle scenes. It is just an awesome...
It is an onslaught.
Hard to follow at points.
Yeah, it is. It is hard to follow. And then you basically have Ant-Man, Thor, Hawkeye. No, not Thor. Hulk. And they're trapped, and War Machine. They're all like trapped under the rubble. And you get that nice scene where the Hulk is kind of lifting up the giant mountain, which reminded me so much, Mike, of, what was it, Secret
Wars?
Yeah, Secret War cover, where he's and you've got your core three, Thor, Captain America, and Iron Man, that just go out to confront Thanos. And it's balls to the wall. It is crazy. It is crazy, and he's unleashing like his entire arsenal shows up, and
the same aliens that rushed on Wakanda at the end of Infinity War show up here as well.
Yeah. And Hawkeye finds the gauntlet, and so now he's on the run. And this was my one problem with this scene, which is it's been explained to us throughout all these movies that no one can touch these stones. You had the scene with the Collector in Guardians where the girl, after Quill, they unlock it, and she immediately goes to grab it and disintegrates. And the only reason that Quill, we find out later, could handle it is because he's half celestial. And even when Nebula goes to grab it, half her arm is eaten away. She's nothing but robotics on the one arm. And that was the one way you could tell the two different Nebulas apart from each other. But these guys are grabbing this thing left and right.
Yeah.
Spider-Man has it at one point.
Because it's like hot potato. But they're grabbing the gauntlet. They're not grabbing the stone.
You're not going to brush up against it. These stones are exposed on the outside of that. Was my one, like, all of a sudden, I'll even argue that, fine, Hawkeye sacrificed Natalie, and he gets the Soul Stone in his hands, and he's able to handle it. But elsewhere, you're right. It's like hot potato. These things are getting thrown all over the place. So
yeah, at one point, as we said, Hawkeye gets it. Spider-Man gets it. A number of heroes are running with the gauntlet. And it's around this time that we see somebody else yield the hammer.
This was the squeal out loud.
This was also an applause section of this movie in the theater.
I'm getting chills just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because they alluded to it in Ultron. That Captain America may be worthy of wielding Mjolnir.
So we see the Cap actually holds Mjolnir. Now, and at one point he also has Stormbreaker. But that one is not, if you remember, that was made in Infinity War, and it does not have the spell that only Thor can wield it.
Right.
So anybody can wield Stormbreaker. It's not just Thor. But Mjolnir, on the other hand, you have to be worthy to pick that up.
Whosoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor.
And as we said, as Jeff just mentioned, if you remember back at the beginning of Ultron, Avengers Age of Ultron, there was that great scene where all the Avengers around the table all have a go at picking up Thor's hammer. And Thor's laughing at them all, trying to pick it up. He knows that they're not going to do it, and he gets worried when Cap steps up because he thinks that Cap can do it. And obviously Cap could, but because he is who he is, he didn't want to embarrass Thor. He pretends that he can't pick it up, right? So we know that now.
Move just a little.
Back, I would like to say that I knew all along, but I didn't. I just thought that Cap must have skeletons in his closet. He can't pick up the hammer either, but he could. He just pretended he couldn't.
That was such a great scene. That to me was it was pure nerdvana.
Did you cry?
No, but I will tell you what. Leading into right after that scene, when all of a sudden you hear Cap, come in, Cap, on your left, and then you just see thousands of Doctor Strange portals open, and every friggin' superhero that we had lost in Infinity Wars comes pouring out.
And that was each one of them got cheers in the theater.
That was my overwhelming. I was choking back. I had tears coming down my face of just pure joy, because there's a point where they're fighting Thanos and you realize, Where are the other heroes? Everyone's back now.
Yep.
And you find out really quickly that how Spider-Man and Doctor Strange made it off Titan. I guess he could just
portaled. He just portaled.
I guess so. Right? I guess. So, and it was a 2-second little, Tony Stark and Peter Parker reunion. And he's like, Mr. Stark, you remember when I was like falling apart and I felt really bad? He goes, I must have passed out and I woke up and all of a sudden they tell me it was 5 years later and now we're here.
But
that leads a whole ton of other questions.
It does, yeah. Especially when we see Peter going back to school. I don't even want to get into that at the end of
Let's go down that road because I want to ask the question. We see Ned. Dude, 5 years have gone by.
But you have to assume that Ned disappeared as well. That
all of his friends. You had his entire class.
But Peter is aware of what happened to him. You have to think that everybody else is aware too, because they're reemerging into a world where it's 5 years later. Going back to school the next day?
Right, because the world's gone
like
to
a
shit,
week where you have to assess what's happened,
Right. Yeah, Ned had to have been, because I'm going to tell you right now, I just got a little memory on Facebook 5 years ago, and it's my son playing baseball, and he looks like a little baby.
Yeah.
He was 13 years old. He's 16 years old. The kid's like 1.5 feet taller now. And I'm like, you can't.
So anybody in that scene must have also disintegrated, because anybody that survived would have graduated high school already by that time. That they were.
So I'm sure that Sony was really pissed off. And they're like, wait, what do you mean that 5 years passed? Yeah. You know what, dude? You figure it out. That's not my problem. That's your movie. That was a huge stumbling block because T'Challa has been missing for 5 years. Someone else had to step up and take over Wakanda. Is he no longer king? Is he?
Or is it Denai that stepped up? Because she was working with the Avengers as well in the beginning of the movie.
That is a good question. That is a good call. So, but the amount of cameos in this movie is just epic.
Everybody from every other Marvel movie shows up in this one.
We do not get a Vision, though.
No.
And that makes perfect sense, but I was very sad about that.
Well, we don't get Loki.
You see Loki in not current Loki, but you saw Loki in the flashbacks in 2012.
In the flashback. So they are dead and they stay dead, apparently, because...
Well, Vision can't operate without the stone.
No, he can't.
You can't have a Vision without the stone. But Kobe Smulders got a credit, but I didn't see Maria Hill.
Oh, no, she was in the funeral scene.
She was in the funeral scene.
Yeah.
But what about Coulson? Did not see Coulson.
No, he was not there.
He wasn't there.
And we'll get to the funeral scene, but I did like the fact that each group of characters in their own franchise were standing by themselves, so they all kind of got like their little call out.
The reason we're talking about a funeral scene is because obviously somebody has to die in order to have a funeral, and that is... This is the big reveal. People.
Is it a big reveal?
Again. Well, it was for me, because I was really shocked that they chose it be Tony Stark rather than Captain America. I was convinced that it was going to be Captain America.
I was convinced that both of them were going to die, but I would have been shocked if Tony Stark did not die. There was 3 times in this movie where you thought he was dead. And even in Infinity War, when Thanos had the best of him, you're like, oh, here we go. This is how Tony Stark goes out. So yes, he wields the gauntlet.
The Iron Man gauntlet.
Yeah. And saves
Now,
the day.
this was, when he snapped, he erased all the bad guys. They all disintegrated.
Yes.
So again, you have to think that this gauntlet just does whatever you want it to do when you yield it. It's not like it has one purpose. Because I was worried that if he was going to snap it, what if he erases another 50% of
right. Half the enemy, half the
Marshmallow Man.
Yeah. So yeah, we get the big death scene from Tony Stark, and of course, just like Thanos and Hulk before him, he's totally messed up by the snap. Yep. Half of his body is burned.
Yep. And his last words, I am Iron Man, which started this entire whole monster 20 plus years ago. Well, not 20 years ago, 20 movies ago.
10 years ago.
11, I guess. But what was great, which we didn't mention, which is Pepper Potts shows up in an Iron Man suit.
In the suit, just as she did in Iron Man 3. Yeah.
I will say this, though. She was a little too willing to just let him die. Like, she was like, all right, you can rest now. Yeah. Like, not even a half-hearted, please, somebody, please save him. It was like, all right, you can rest now. We got this. But
I have to say, this takes place, of course. Thanos is defeated after Tony does the snap. They all disintegrate. He has his death scene. And if you guys can just humor me and tell me that you experience this as well, I like to call it whitewashing. After a big emotional scene, you're just struck with abruptly with a bright scene
light.
to get your eyes to water, to even make you more emotional than you already were. And it's manipulation, and it's done pretty much in 90%.
You've called this out numerous times, yeah.
And I've looked it up to see if there's a term for it, and there's not. But so many directors use it, and I know it's intentional to really follow a scene like that with a flash of bright light just to help you along if you weren't already there.
Yeah,
I was already there.
It was a manipulation. Yeah,
I was going there without the whitewash or not, Jim. To be honest.
Okay.
I will say this, though. After the whole buildup of Captain Marvel, she was completely wasted.
She was. She
Yeah.
was
She
in
was
it like 10 minutes.
completely wasted. She was on the other side of the galaxy for 3. She was really only there to save Tony and Nebula. I mean, she did come down at the last second in the battle and take out the battle cruiser. But that was really it. I mean, Thanos, as much as they were like, oh, yeah, she's the most powerful character in the universe, Thanos knocked her aside in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Now, this was filmed before Captain Marvel, though, right?
Yes, she actually filmed these scenes before Captain Marvel, but chronologically, Captain Marvel takes place much.
Right.
And even all the naysayers are like, oh, she's got a feminine agenda and all this other crap that went on leading into Captain Marvel, and then they just have the scene with all the women surrounding her, and I'm like, oh, there it is. Yeah, I guess they're right.
Jeff, this sounds like a criticism of this movie, and
Listen, I will not. I can nitpick this because you can nitpick it, and when we start getting into the time travel stuff, we can really. I can't say this is the best movie in history, but I think it's one of the most satisfying. Well, I mean, it's a brilliant way to pay homage of everything that's come before it, and they took everything that they just wrapped it up in a nice Mobius strip bow. It's secular. The fact that they went back into Avengers, it was well done. It was very well done. It was a little too long. I think they could have trimmed it a bit.
Especially the opening scenes, all the in mourning scenes.
It's a slow, but I think it's a slow buildup. And you know what I read was that initially Infinity War was going to end before he does the snap. That was all going to take place in this movie. So you would have got the snap, and then the repercussions, and then the rebuild, all in one movie. And the fact that we had to wait an entire year, I think, added to the angst of what these characters were going through.
Right.
I think it worked much better because you're like, holy shit, where are they going from here?
Yeah, well, we were in mourning for a year.
Yeah.
So now let's get into it. This is the coda of the movie. Thanos has been defeated, and now it's up to them. Tony Stark has been put at rest.
Yep, and there's a
And
nice
now it's
little
up to them to return.
scene,
It's up to them to return those stones.
which was the plan all along, which was to now take them back and put them exactly where they found them. But it doesn't matter. You've already created a divergent timeline. You now have a Thanos, a 2012 Thanos, who died, so he never invades New York.
In that timeline.
In this timeline. But I'm saying, there's still the main timeline that they all came from. You can, that was the one argument, which is you can't change your past. Because your future is your past. But by going back and taking those stones and forcing Thanos to now jump into the future, they've created an alternative timeline.
True, but Thanos still existed. It doesn't erase his existence from the original timeline.
Right.
No,
The
there's an
Battle of New
alternative
York
timeline.
still occurred.
Yes. You also have a second alternative timeline where Loki takes the Tesseract, and whatever he does with it, we don't know. What the ramifications are, we don't know.
And how many divergent timelines did Captain America create by going back with those stones?
Right.
Well, let's talk
about that, all right?
Let's get to Captain America's, because this is, like you said, this is out of all these characters, and Mike, you said it. The Avengers rekindled your love for comic books. I've been reading comic books since I was 8 years old. I was never really a Captain America fan per se. I read the books, I liked them, but the emotional connections that I have at the cinematic level for this character is beyond words. And so I thought that this was a beautiful, beautiful way to send this character off.
Agreed.
I agree as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
A touching tribute to the man.
Yes. And he finally,
Although, think about it
out.
this way. So Captain America has the hammer, right? He's got the stones. He's got to return everything.
All right. How come he didn't return the baseball mitt that Hawkeye stole?
This is true. Yeah,
is that an alternative timeline now?
But first of all, they don't explain.
This baseball mitt.
Is he gonna say hello to Red Skull? Is he gonna hand back the Soul Stone? How does he do that? How do you hand back the Soul Stone?
Right.
Yeah. Here, dude. I'll see you in a couple years.
No.
How do you inject the ether back into Natalie Portman?
Oh, that's a good question. That is a good question.
Yeah.
Well, maybe yeah. We can only speculate how that went down.
Speculate on that one.
I would like
so that aside, after he returns these stones, he decides not to come back.
Yeah, he's supposed to come back. He'll come back, and it takes him as long as it takes him, the Hulk says, but it'll only be like 5 seconds for us. And Bucky knew. I think Bucky knew all along
what he was
Bucky knew. It's a one-way trip, baby. He is not coming back.
So Cap makes the decision to go into retirement back in 1945, whenever it was that he went into the ice. So he lives out his whole life with Peggy Carter.
Yeah.
Now, this raises a number of questions. Does this mean that there's still a Cap in the ice that never
At some point, he had to come out. At some point,
yes.
That still has to happen.
In that timeline that he goes back to that 1945, there's a Cap that exists in the ice and out the ice.
So does he just hide in her basement for 70 years?
And that means he has to ignore all these world events that he knows is going to happen.
Because he can't change them.
No.
So here's right. And not only that, if by going back he creates, we're going to follow the logic of an alternative timeline. How the hell does he get back to our timeline as an old man to hand over the shield to?
Right, because he wouldn't have existed in our timeline. He's created a divergent timeline when he goes back to that 1945.
Yeah. So there's some big questions
the
there.
The rules that have been set up have just been thrown out the window by the end of it.
This is the biggest problem I had with this movie, and I have one. I can't even take credit for this.
Careful,
okay, so follow me for 1 second. Was he her husband all along? I'm going to draw a blank on the movies, but she does make mention that when Captain America saved a bunch of people, including my husband, she said, you never see the husband, but she does have a wedding ring on. And when he visits her as an old lady, you see the kids in the picture, but the husband is not in the photo. So could he theoretically have been her husband the whole time and just knew when current Steve Rogers was going to go and visit her and conveniently sidestepped or was out of the picture? I mean, this is a huge leap of faith.
Yeah.
This is a huge leap of faith.
So the Steve Rogers that visited her in Winter Soldier wouldn't have realized that he was her husband.
Correct. Yeah, because that's his future, even though technically it's his present past. Yeah. She did seem confused by his younger version, but that could easily be chalked up to old age dementia.
So you're saying that the Steve Rogers that's sitting on the bench is the husband, Steve Rogers, that did exist in that timeline.
Yeah, he could have. He would have been over 100 years old. I mean, I guess the serum keeps you going, but you're right. He would have had to ignore all the other stuff, like everything inside of the guy that says, I'm a good guy and I'm here to help and I'm for the people. He would have had to just swallow that, knowing that his other version was going to.
All right, I will accept this as canon because I like the thought of this more than if they just completely ignored the rules that they had just set up an hour previously.
Yeah.
Jeff, you brought something to the table. Absolutely. I am as well.
It wasn't popcorn.
We'll go with it.
I don't know if you want to consider it another timeline. No, we've had enough.
No, let's stop right there.
We got enough. Only because we now have Gamora. We now have a 2014 Gamora in the 2023 who does not know she doesn't know Quill. She doesn't know anybody. All she knew was daughter of Thanos.
Did she die in the snap? Or is she still on Earth?
No, remember he threw her, he sacrificed
That's how he got
her.
the Soul Stone in Infinity.
He sacrificed her. Her and Natalie are now hanging out together in the Soul Stone.
No, but I mean in this timeline, because when the movie ends, she's unaccounted for.
No, she's there. because
But where is she? But is she?
Well, they're tracking her,
Earth,
right?
She's now trapped in the future.
And at the end, the Guardians, the Asgardians of the Galaxy, are tracking Gamora. They're going after her.
Yeah, because she has the scene with, was it Mantis? She looks at Quill and she's like, him? And she goes, well, it's either him or the tree. You know? So she has no clue. He actually, when he sees her, when Quill sees her, he's like, I thought I lost you. And she immediately, he goes to kiss her or whatever. She immediately like knees him in the crotch. Like,
But you
get away from me. I don't know who you are.
Maybe I missed this through the tears. Is how did she get off of Earth? There's one spaceship, right? So how did she get off?
I don't know. Is that who they were going after? I didn't pick up on that, Jim. That they were going after her when they were
Didn't
all.
they bring her up on one of the screens there as they were in the ship? I assumed that's what they were doing. I'll have to watch it again.
Unless she escaped in one of Thanos' ship, because it is now.
Right.
We now have a Gamora that knows none of the Guardians.
Yeah.
And there is a timeline where there were no Guardians because Nebula and War Machine took the Time Stone.
So you're welcome. We've brought you all the way through Endgame at this point. There's no need for you to see it if you.
Oh my God! I have one lingering question, and this is the biggest question I have of this entire movie: who the hell puts mayonnaise on a hot dog?
Also, I wanted to call back. The kid that you see at the funeral,
Yes,
I'm like, who's that kid?
I had to look him up because it was like all by himself, and you're like, who
it's
is
the kid from Iron Man 3, right?
Yep,
that kid.
All grown up. And there's actually a nice little Iron Man callback because you see Happy with Morgan, Tony's little daughter, and she's like, he goes, you hungry? You want something to eat? Cheeseburger. Oh, you like cheeseburgers? Your dad liked cheeseburgers, which is a callback to Iron Man when he first gets rescued out of the cave.
Yeah,
and that's what he requests: American hamburger. Cheeseburger. Yeah, it's a lot to unpack. It is going back into the original Avengers movie. I thought was brilliant. No, it obviously, you just heard from us that it lays open a huge amount of questions.
But at some point, you just have to give up.
You got it. Just go for it. But I want to say one more thing, and then this is a personal note. Go back a year. We had just started this podcast. And our former co-host, David, had shared a picture with us, a behind-the-scenes picture of the cast all wearing these little watch-like devices on their wrists. And he said, what do you think that is? And I called them out as some kind of a chronometer meant to keep them stable in timeline. Yes. Suck it, David. Suck it. Because he's like, how the hell do you know that? And I said, 30 years of reading comic books. You have to kind of take... So there you go. So kudos to me.
Bravo, Jeff. Bravo.
Yeah, well done, Jeff, on your own call.
So I dare to ask. I dare to ask you guys, how many buckets are we giving?
Man, I can't. Can you even? I can't go 5, but it is about as damn close as you're going to get.
I'm going to go 5.
Are you going 5?
I'm going to go 5.
Yeah, I'm going 5. 21 movies, 22 movies in, and this is how they ended. Genius.
Completely satisfying.
All right, you've now sold me. This is
on the 5 bucket list as of today.
Right. If it had to stand alone, maybe not a 5, but as the end to the Avengers, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it does bring up questions, these time travel things, but I didn't care. The emotion of the movie overrode the question.
It is, and the build up. And while I wasn't really on the hype train, as it got closer, and like I said, as I'm standing outside of the theater, I realized the ramifications of the emotional connection you have with these characters the last 10 years. I would have lost money if you told me that he was going to hand the shield over to Sam and not Bucky, though.
Yeah.
Did not see that coming.
So does this mean Sam at some point is going to become a super soldier as well? Because all he's got going is the electric
wings, right? Yeah,
the wing.
Yeah. Well, I think in the comics, both of those characters have carried the mantle of Captain America.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
It's an emotional, it's.
And let us, give you a heads up right now. You don't really get an end credits.
No end credit, but it's a nice title sequence going out.
It is.
All the actors get their due.
And you do get like a hammering kind of
I did hear. I didn't stay for that, but I did hear, which is again
hammering.
Iron Man back in the cave.
Yeah.
Started it all.
But that's it. That's all you get.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Okay, guys. I don't think we should spend a lot of time on this since I think we've already gone over the hour mark at this point.
Absolutely. Well, I know we all did our homework. You mentioned it before, which is we all went back and kind of dove in to some of these other movies. And Mike, I know you said you were going to watch Avengers.
And no, I ended up watching Black Panther.
Oh, interesting.
Which I did not like any more than I did the first time around.
Were you hoping that maybe it kind of would grow on you?
Now, Thor Ragnarok, on the third or fourth viewing, I really was jamming to.
Ragnarok, I've always loved, and it gets better every time I see it.
It does. And I think that going into, you mentioned it before, which is, Thor leaves with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and he makes a joke, as Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a comic series, by the way. But I think if they're going to take that level of humor and interject this character from what we've seen, I can't wait.
Jeff Goldblum, brilliant in Ragnarok. And his performance gets better and better. And just the whole Willy Wonka buildup of meeting him is when Thor's
literally a Willy Wonka. They play the theme.
They play
which
Pure
is
Imagination, right?
Yep.
I think it's right up there, and it would be a crime if they don't make another one with that same director.
Yeah. Who I didn't realize Watiki does the voice of Korg.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. Hey man. Matter of fact, in this movie, he actually is dressed. He's got the Hawaiian shirt on, and they're playing. Are they playing Fortnite?
Yeah.
They're playing a video game, which was great. That was good.
Let the rebellion begin.
But what's funny is they have made no attempt to explain how Valkyrie and Korg made it off that ship with half the Asgardians before Thanos destroyed it.
It's in a different timeline.
There you go. Everything can be explained away now by just alternate timeline. I love it.
And I still hold the torch out for Thor: The Dark World. I've always liked this movie, and it's always dumped upon. But I think it's probably Loki's finest hour. I love Loki, and I think he's never better than in Thor: Dark World.
Is that the one with the Matt Damon cameo as well?
No, that's Ragnarok.
Yeah. Oh, that was Ragnarok.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was going with my favorite moment in all of.
Go ahead. Go
ahead.
Here's my favorite moment, which you can't surpass or throw away the hero shot reveal in Avengers, where they're all standing together for the first time, especially with that swelling soundtrack. But I'm gonna go back. I got to go back to Winter Soldier. I rewatched that the other night, and that highway chase is just so unlike anything else that we'd seen before or since in the Marvel universe. It's not superheroes, fisticuffs flying around, throwing things at each other. It is down and dirty, real world combat. And I love the choreography, and I love the execution. I love the whole movie. It's still my number one movie.
Mine is also from Winter Soldier, my favorite scene, and it's maybe a throwaway to most people. It's when Captain America, Black Widow, they're coming in on the ship, and they're gonna rescue the hostages. And
the opening of the movie.
Opening.
Yep.
And there's a scene where they're in sort of the control room or where you steer the ship, and the guy throws the grenade in, and Captain America scoops up Black Widow, and as they're going to crash into this next room, she pulls out her pistol and blows out the window. And I'm like, it was so well done.
It's like one fluid shot, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. No, I just, that movie really, and most of it is handheld. If you watch that, which I think really adds
it's
to
very frenetic and in your face action.
Yeah, and it's not a superhero movie. It is more
It's like an espionage. It's like a conspiracy thriller. That's what it is.
Yeah, and that's where you get that beautiful fight sequence in the elevator.
Yes, and the fact that he falls however many stories and lands on the shield, that's probably my highlight from this movie.
Yeah, no, love it.
So next week, we don't really know what we're going to do.
We don't know what we're doing.
We're still breathing into the paper bag from the end of Endgame here. So we've got to really reassess what we want to continue with, just like Marvel.
Yeah.
So hopefully
we'll blank slate moving forward, kids.
Yeah. You know what I saw? That they have an Ultraman series that just dropped on Netflix.
I was watching the little trailer for that.
So that could be a possibility. I don't know how long those episodes are.
Yeah. I don't know. I've been watching The Running Man. That's been on the last couple days. And that's also on Prime, I think. Yeah. Do you know that was directed by Michael Glazier?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. What the hell's the last time you heard that name?
All right. So ends our Endgame discussion. Thanks for listening.
Yes.
As always.
Oh, goodbye.
May the force be with you.
All right. Bye.
Thanos did exactly what he said he was going to do. He wiped out 50% of all living creatures.